I'm a 40-year-old man, and I have a 16-year-old daughter named Jade. My ex-wife, Margot, is now 38. And looking back, I never thought I'd be where I am today, reflecting on everything that happened. Our story starts more than 15 years ago when Margot and I first met. I was 21, just starting my career, when I met Margot, who was 19 at the time. We were introduced through some mutual friends at a party, and there was an instant connection. Margot was smart, beautiful, and had a sense of humor that drew me in. I knew from the moment we started talking that I wanted to ask her out. So I did, right there at the party. To my surprise, she said yes, and from that moment on, we were inseparable. We dated for a few months before meeting each other's families, and after almost a year, we decided to move in together. Margot had been living on campus while attending college, but I lived in an apartment nearby. I asked her to move in with me, and without hesitation, she agreed. It seemed like the perfect next step for us young, in love, with everything ahead of us. At the time, we both had big dreams. Margot had always been the type of person who excelled at everything she did, and I had no doubt she'd have a bright career ahead of her. Looking back now, it's easy to see how the choices we made back then shaped everything that happened later. After she graduated from college, Margot found out she was pregnant. This was a major turning point. I remember the day she told me, and I could see the hesitation in her eyes. She was torn between keeping the baby and pursuing her career. I told her I would support her no matter what decision she made, because ultimately, it was her choice. She decided to keep the baby, and I was thrilled. I was 24 at the time, working in marketing, and though my salary was decent, it wasn't enough to cover childcare. Margot had just graduated, and with no real work experience, it didn't make sense to ask her to work while she was pregnant. So, after discussing it thoroughly, we agreed that she would stay home and raise our child while I worked to support us. I repeatedly asked if she was sure about her decision, feeling guilty that she might be sacrificing her own future for our family. But she reassured me that it was what she wanted. It's important to note that every major decision we made during this time was hers. Whether it was moving in with me, keeping the baby, or deciding to be a stay-at-home mom, Margot was in control of those decisions. I supported her because I wanted what was best for her, and I trusted her judgment. But things started to unravel in the months that followed Jade's birth. Margot began showing signs of postpartum depression. At first, I thought it was just the stress of being a new mother, but as time passed, it became clear that it was something more serious. I tried to talk to her about it, but she dismissed it, saying she was fine. I even spoke to her parents, hoping they could help her see a therapist, but Margot refused. Looking back, I should have insisted more, but at the time, I didn't know what to do. I was scared that she might hurt herself or the baby. It's a fear that no parent should ever feel, but it was real. Margot wasn't just going through a phase, she was struggling. I just didn't know how to get her the help she needed. Over time, Margot became more irritable and distant. The joy we had once shared seemed to vanish. It wasn't just the sleepless nights or the constant demands of a newborn. It was something deeper. She became angry all the time, and I was the target. It didn't matter how hard I tried. Nothing seemed to be enough. I was working long hours to support the family, but when I came home, it felt like I was walking on eggshells. Margot was always mad, and it didn't matter what I did. In the beginning, I tried to understand. I knew parenting was tough, and I had hoped the tension would ease as time went on. But even after a year or two, nothing changed. I started to feel like Margot was looking for reasons to argue, and the smallest things would set her off. I tried to brush it off, but after a long day at work, I didn't want to come home to constant fights. It began to wear on me. The more we argued, the more I realized that Margot was holding on to a lot of resentment. She would always bring up the sacrifices she had made, how she had given up her career to stay home with Jade. I understood that, but the more she talked about it, the more I began to feel like it was being used as a weapon against me. No matter how much I tried to show her my gratitude, planning dates, taking her to nice restaurants, celebrating milestones, nothing seemed to make her happy. She just kept complaining that I wasn't grateful enough. It reached a point where I started to question whether I could ever make her happy. I had tried everything I could think of to show her appreciation, but it wasn't enough. It was like, no matter what I did, she could always find something wrong with it. It was exhausting. I began to feel trapped. I was caught in a cycle of guilt and frustration. I tried to talk to her about how I was feeling, but it always ended in a fight. It felt like Margot was determined to make me feel responsible for everything that went wrong in her life. I had supported her through every decision, moving in together, having a child, staying home to raise that child, but none of it seemed to matter. After 5 years of constant tension and arguing, I reached a breaking point. I realized that we couldn't go on like this. Our relationship was toxic, and Jade deserved better than to grow up in an environment filled with constant conflict. I decided it was time for a divorce. It wasn't easy, but I knew it was the right choice. The conversation with Margot didn't go as I expected. When I told her I wanted a divorce, I was shocked by her response. She confessed that she had been having an affair with a coworker for months. The betrayal hit me like a ton of bricks. I had no idea. It was a shock, but it also made the decision easier. I had already fallen out of love with her by then, and hearing that she had been unfaithful removed any remaining doubt that I was making the right choice. The divorce was relatively amicable, though. Margot didn't fight me for much, and she knew she had no grounds to contest anything. She agreed to the terms without much pushback, except when it came to custody of Jade. Margot fought hard for joint custody, but I wanted Jade to live with me most of the time. We eventually settled on a shared custody arrangement, with Jade spending half the month with each of us. It wasn't ideal, but it was what we both agreed on. Now, after the divorce, I've been able to focus on giving Jade the life she deserves. The constant tension is gone, and I can finally be the father I've always wanted to be. The hardest part of this whole process was watching how Margot treated Jade after everything was finalized. Despite fighting so hard for custody, Margot's behavior towards Jade has been shocking. She expects her to do all the housework and has even let her skip school to help around the house. Jade has finally had enough. She refused to go back to Margot's house, and I supported her decision. I knew that Jade deserved better than to live in an environment where she was treated like an unpaid maid. It's heartbreaking to watch, but I'm committed to doing everything I can to give Jade a better life, away from the toxicity that defined our marriage. Looking back, it's hard to believe how far we've come. The pain of the divorce was real, but it was the right decision. I have a better relationship with Jade now, and for that, I'm thankful. I only wish Margot had realized sooner that it wasn't just about her sacrifices, it was about all of us. But in the end, Jade and I will be fine. We're stronger now, and that's all that matters. It was a huge relief when I finally left my job and started my own business. The decision had been on my mind for years, but I could never bring myself to take the leap until that moment. Looking back, I can honestly say it was one of the best decisions I made for my mental health and overall well-being. I didn't realize how much I had been dreading going into that office every day until I didn't have to anymore. The guy who had broken up my marriage was working just a few desks away from me, and the thought of being in the same room with him during and after my divorce was more than I could handle. It was hard enough going through the divorce without having to see him every day. After the separation, I knew I needed to make a change. My ex, Margot, and I went through a very public breakup. She wasn't the only one at fault, but it was hard for me to move past the betrayal. Margot tried to apologize after the separation, but by the time she did, her apology felt meaningless to me. I stayed in touch with her mainly because we had to co-parent Jade. Otherwise, I would have had no reason to speak to her again. And honestly, I didn't want to stay in touch, but I did it because of Jade. After the divorce, communication between Margot and me was minimal. Even to this day, we only talk when it's absolutely necessary. It's been over 10 years since we split up, and in that time, we've both moved on with our lives. Margot remarried a couple of years ago to a guy named Shane. From what I know, her mother played a role in introducing them. Shane's an architect, or so I've heard, and from what I've gathered, he's a decent guy. Good for her, I suppose. As for me, I've had my fair share of casual relationships, but nothing serious. I don't blame anyone for not wanting to date a guy with a teenage daughter. It's complicated. But then, a couple of months ago, Margot dropped a bombshell. She was pregnant again. At first, I was taken aback. Given her age, I thought it was a bit risky, but I didn't say anything. Many women choose to have children later in life these days, and with advances in medical care, it's becoming more common. I genuinely wished her well, and I congratulated her. That was the last of our interaction, and I didn't think much of it. But soon after the announcement, I began to notice something troubling. Jade started becoming increasingly reluctant to visit Margot. She'd come back from her time there looking exhausted and unhappy. At first, I didn't think much of it. Jade had a lot going on with school, and I assumed that was the reason. But as time went on, it became clear that something wasn't right. Jade never really opened up about it, and when I asked her, she insisted everything was fine. But I could tell she was hiding something from me. Finally, this month, when Jade came back to live with me, I noticed she seemed more tired than usual. Her exhaustion was palpable, and I knew something had changed. I decided to sit down and talk to her. At first, she insisted everything was okay, but after some coaxing, she finally confided in me. What she told me made my blood boil. Jade explained that Margot and Shane had started treating her like a housekeeper. Every day after school, when she would get home, she was expected to cook and clean the house from top to bottom. Jade told me that she couldn't say no because whenever she protested, Margot would play the pregnancy card, making her feel guilty for not helping more. Apparently, Margot would whine about how I had never been helpful during her pregnancy with Jade, and now that she was expecting again, she had hoped Jade would be more sensitive and helpful. But the situation didn't stop there. Shane, too, was no help. He would complain about being tired after work, saying he couldn't pitch in. Jade was left to do everything: cooking, cleaning, laundry, while they sat back and did nothing. Margot even tried to justify it by claiming it wasn't that big of a deal because Jade didn't have to do all of it the rest of the month. According to her, when Jade was living with me, Margot and Shane had to fend for themselves. Jade didn't like it, but she went along with it because she didn't want to feel guilty. She didn't want to leave her pregnant mother in the lurch. It wasn't a fair situation, but Jade kept it to herself because she was afraid of the fallout. She was trying to keep the peace, but it wasn't easy. She didn't want to tell me because she was worried about causing a scene, and she didn't want me to get angry. But after weeks of this, she couldn't take it anymore. Then came the final straw. The day before Jade was supposed to come back to me, she was packing her things when Shane walked by and noticed. He asked why she was packing, and she explained that her time at Margot's was up, and it was my turn to have her. Shane made a flippant comment about how he was going to miss her, but he said the house was going to be a mess without her for the next 2 weeks. He even joked about hiring a housekeeper to clean up after them. When Jade pressed him, Shane casually told her that she was nothing more than a glorified housemaid. He said it like it was a compliment, claiming that Jade was really good at it and that she could probably make a career out of it. The comment shocked Jade, and she was devastated by it. It wasn't just disrespectful, it was outright misogynistic. I was furious when Jade told me what Shane had said. I had heard good things about him from other people, but this comment revealed the truth about his character. It was disgusting, and I couldn't let it slide. Jade had already decided she wasn't going back, but I knew I couldn't just leave it at that. I had to confront Margot. I called her up the next hour and told her everything. I recounted what Jade had said, including the appalling comment Shane made. I demanded an explanation. I needed to understand why she thought any of this was acceptable. I was angry, and my blood was boiling. Jade was a school student, not a housekeeper, and there was no reason she should have been made to do all the work around the house. I told Margot that, while I could somewhat understand why she might not be able to do much around the house due to pregnancy, there was no excuse for Shane not helping. He was an adult. If a teenager could juggle schoolwork and household chores, surely an adult man could handle some basic chores without complaining. To my surprise, Margot laughed. She brushed it off, saying Shane didn't mean it that way. She tried to downplay the situation, claiming I was overreacting. She told me to stop creating drama. I was shocked by her response. She even tried to justify Shane's behavior, saying it was just how they talked. It was clear to me now that Margot had lost all respect for herself. She was so accustomed to being treated like an afterthought that she didn't even recognize the disrespect anymore. I told her that, based on how she was handling this situation, I didn't think she was fit to be a mother. I even said that I hoped her next child would be a son because she clearly wasn't capable of raising a daughter. I then hung up. Since then, Margot and her family have been harassing me. They believe I crossed a line, especially because I said it to a pregnant woman. They think I should have been more sensitive. Jade, too, thinks I should have let it go since she had already decided she wasn't going back. But for me, this wasn't just a minor issue. It was about standing up for my daughter and not letting anyone, not even Margot, treat her like this. Ida for telling my pregnant ex-wife she was unfit to be a mother? Update 1. Hi everyone. It's been 4 days since my original post, and I've seen a lot of responses. Most of you agree with my decision, which I appreciate. However, some of you seem to think I wasn't a good husband. Let me clarify, I was incredibly supportive throughout our marriage. The reason it fell apart was because Margot wasn't willing to fight for us. I never cheated, even when things were tough. I wanted to work things out for our daughter, Jade. Even when I filed for divorce, it was for Jade as much as it was for me. I also agree that housewives should be appreciated, but Margot doesn't deserve that recognition. Let's not forget, she cheated on me. I stand by my decision and don't feel I owe her an apology. I spoke with Jade about the situation, and she doesn't want to be around Margot for now. She feels like she wasn't treated with love or respect, and I agree. Because of this, we've decided to file for full custody. Although Jade is still a minor for 2 more years, we want to ensure Margot can't negatively impact her life during this time. Update 2. A couple of days ago, my lawyer and I filed for full custody of Jade. Yesterday, Margot was served with the papers. Needless to say, she was furious and went online to blast me. She claimed I was the most insensitive man she's ever met, regretted everything, and accused me of ruining her life. She even blamed me for her giving up her career. This time, I didn't let it slide. I took screenshots, sent them to my lawyer, and then responded in the comments with the truth. Of course, she disabled comments when she realized I had proof. I blocked her after that, and I feel a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. Whatever happens from here on out, we'll settle it in court. Update 3, here's another update. It turns out we didn't need to proceed with the custody negotiations because Margot signed away her parental rights to Jade. She told me a couple of days ago, and my lawyer quickly drafted the paperwork. This came as a surprise since, the last time we fought for custody, Margot was determined to keep Jade. But now, with her new family, she's clearly shifted her priorities. In an email, she blamed me for turning Jade against her, accusing me of poisoning her against her. She said I was getting exactly what I wanted all along, proof that she was a bad mother. Honestly, I didn't do any of that. Jade chose to live with me because she wasn't happy with how she was treated by Margot and Shane. She even requested full custody. I've decided to put Jade in therapy to help her process everything. She's been through a lot, and she deserves peace. I'm hoping to be the best single dad I can be for her. So far, she seems happy with the decision, and I'm just grateful she's safe and happy now. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more. We appreciate your support and can't wait to see you in the next video.